Hello, everyone. This is Jacob Owen, systems engineer for Aruba here in Indiana. I wanted to take some time today to go through zero-touch provisioning with VSF stack switches using Aruba Central. VSF is our front-side stacking technology that we use on some of our different various types of switches like the 2930F or even the 5400R. So the first thing we need to do is we need to have a central account. I've got my central account pulled up here. And then the most important thing is we have to have the devices already added into, Central with the subscription assigned. So here I've got the two switches that we're talking about here. And they are in here. They have a subscription assigned. Yeah, they've both got the subscription assigned. So then what we need to do is we need to come in here and we'll need to create a new template group. In this case, I've already got a template group assigned called 2930F stacked. And then what I, from here, will do is I'll come in and I'll create a new template for it. In this case, I've already created a new template. This is a pretty basic template. It just goes through setting the host name. If you're stacking, which we are, will be in here. And then some basic settings like, which ports are untagged for VLANs 2, 3, 4, 5, and 83 in my case. And then we just call those out as well as the system IP address. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go back in here. And run device inventory, I did forget. We will want to put what's going to be the master switch. We want to put that, assign it to the new group that we created. That way that as soon as it comes in, it automatically starts to pull down the configuration. So I went in here, I hit assign group, or I highlighted the switch, I hit assign group, and then I went to assign devices, and then I picked the group name. And it was assigned successfully. So now we'll go back to account home. Go back to network operations. I'm going to attach the switch to the network. I've got this switch up and running. It is a factory defaulted 2930F switch. So we're going to wait for it to get connected to Central. Okay, so it's trying to connect right now. We're going to wait for it to show up here under switches. As soon as it does, we will be able to start modifying. As you can see right now, there's no variables defined for this switch because it's factory defaulted. Central has never seen the switch, so when the switch is pulled into the group, the variable file will start to show up for that unique switch. Okay, now we have it right there. It says 2930F stack. This is a group, and then Aruba 2930F 8G. So go out and come back in here. So here are the variables that it pulled by default. As you can see here, these are all the variables, but as you can see, it's missing some things like the VLAN 2 untagged, VLAN 3 untagged, VLAN 4, etc. So because of that, it's actually going to fail and it won't be able to push any configurations, which is good because I want to get the variable file set up so that it pushes out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down a copy of the variable file. So I'm going to open this over here. Open up Microsoft Excel. Okay. So and here's the variable file that we're going to use. So the first thing we can modify is we can modify the host name. So we're going to call the switch, we're going to call it the 2930F 8G. Let's call it 2930F TG. System IP address, we're given an IP address of 10.3.0.10. And then under the system stack command, so this is a really important one. This is where we're actually going to predefine the system stack information so that when you switch, it automatically will be pre-configured to support stacking. So what that's going to look like, I'm going to start typing in the, actually I've created it, I've already got it done over here, so I'll just copy and paste it in. Okay, so what this does is this enables VSF, it enables domain 1 as the domain number. It then sets the configuration for member 1, it sets the switch type so it knows whether it's a 8 port, 24 port, 48 port. Then it also sets the MAC address. So this way we are actually pre-provisioning the switch so that when another one comes in, it's automatically going to be able to figure out what member it is and pull out its configuration. We're going to set the priority to 255, we're going to set the one of the VSF links to port 1/9. We're going to give that link a name. Then we're going to exit. We're going to do the same thing. Now we can do this across, multiple switches and then really predefine these. So after the switch reboots, it'll be ready to start stacking. And then the other fields that we need to put in here are the other. Like VLAN2 untagged /2, 2/2. So in this case, I'm just setting different values for the different ports. And then going forward, all these values will be in any future variable files that we download, so we won't have to go through this step. We'll just have to assign the new ports for the new switch that we're putting in. Okay, so essentially what I've just done here is I've set up the system stacking command. And then I've set my my variables for VLAN2 ports that are untagged, VLAN3, VLAN4, VLAN5, and then the VLAN83, which is my voice VLAN. So essentially what I can do here, the most important thing here is that we need to modify this as a yes to modify, otherwise it won't push the variables. It won't overwrite these variables in the file. So we're going to save this. And what we can do is we can actually go into the switch itself inside of Central. And we can look to see, go to the switch itself, hit device, go to configuration audit. And we're going to see that there's a template error exists. If we click on view template errors, what we're going to see is we're going to say, hey, this device has missing variables. So the system IP address, VLAN2, VLAN3, etc. So this is the reason why it hasn't actually pushed the config. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back to the group. I'm going to go to the gear. I'm going to go to variables. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload this new variable file. So what you're going to see happen is almost immediately, open this guy, and we're going to watch. So what's going to happen is the first step is just going to push down that new config. That new config is going to consist of a enabling VSF. As soon as we enable VSF, the switch is going to reboot. So you can see here, it's going to go through the reboot process, and essentially what it's done is it's just pulled down all that config. It's rebooting, and once this is done, we can connect the second switch into the VSF. It will reboot, come back up, and pull down its config. But we've already predefined the configuration in the variable, so we've already set the untagged ports, even for the secondary or if we had one the third member automatically. So this takes a few minutes. All right, we're still waiting on the switch to initialize. Shouldn't be much longer. The nice thing is that once we get this done, I can easily right erase the switch, reboot it, and all these variables will still be in place. The template will still be in place, so we can literally, get back to running order in just a few minutes. Okay, so now the initialization is done. The switch is back online. We're gonna. Okay. So we seem to have an issue with connectivity. Okay, so it looks like for some reason the configs didn't push, so let's go into the device and see if we can find out why. Okay, so this is the config that it attempted to push. Okay, so after doing a little bit of investigating, I think I found the issue. There was a typo in my VSF stacking configuration. This is why one of the things I always recommend is build a config, without central beforehand, and then import that in. Obviously, that would get rid of any, typos, and then you can use that same template moving forward and just simply, copy and paste the variables and change the MAC address, for example, on your stack members. So right now we've got the switch is back online. I actually walk through this whole process at the end just to make sure everything is working. But we've got the two members, but I only have the first members online. So if you do show stacking, so VSF, you can actually see that the number one is online, but number two has been provisioned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it into the secondary. So I'm in the second one. it's going to, I just plugged in port 9. So essentially, since it has no configuration, it's listening for a VSF link on the other side, which has been set up on the commander. The secondary is going to detect that information. It's going to pop up here and say, you know, VSF joining, rebooting to join VSF domain 1. And there it goes. Okay, so now it shows that the VSF secondary has come online because it's telling me to press any key to get to the commander. So log into the commander. Now see that the primary and secondary are both online, and you can see the port configurations and the different VLANs have been pulled down by the template. So you can see here, VLAN 2 untagged is 1.1, or sorry, 1.2 and 2.2, which is right there. VLAN 3 is 1.3 and 2.3, which is also right there. So obviously, if we wanted to modify these, we could come in here. If we wanted to change some, ports so that we add them different VLANs, we'll come in here and say we're going to add 1.3-1/4, 2.3-2/4. So it's going to add another 2 ports to that VLAN. We will have to remove those. We would have to remove those from the VLAN 4 untagged as they're untagged down here. And it won't actually push the change until you get rid of that second one, just because it's going to pretty much see an overlap. It's going to say, hey, I've got 2 VLAN 3 or 2 changes of trying to both set the VLAN to untagged. So you have to get rid of one and then push the other. So what this looks like, we're just going to start over all of this from scratch, just because so if you ever need to go in here and make any changes to the switch while it's being managed by Central, you can do config t Aruba-central support-mode enable. That lets you make local changes. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a erase startup config, reboot. As the switch is back to its factory default, we're going to plug in the commander. It's going to reboot. Force. Activate provision force, which forces a faster provisioning process from Aruba Central. Okay, we're about ready to reboot. Just waiting for this to update. Okay, so as expected, it's rebooting now because it got the VSF commands down from the central template. It just takes about 2.5 minutes. I'm going to pause it just so you have some light. Okay. You can see that it's back online. Plug in the stack import of the second member. Second member is going to reboot and come online and be part of the stack. So that's doing that. A couple of the items that we'll go over. So this process requires central account, the device to be in the inventory. I recommend putting the commander switch into the new template group that you create before you get started, just because it saves one step of having to move it. Because if a default switch comes into central, it's going to go into the default group by default. And it may have a separate password. It may push some different configurations down. So that, therefore, I recommend putting it, at least the commander, in the group that you're wanting it to be part of. You know, from the get-go, connected into central. It's going to come into that group. It's not going to be able to push its config because the template that you create inside of the template group is going to refer to variables that have not been created yet, because you have to manually create the variables in the file. It won't just see that there's variables in there and put those in the variable file. But as soon as those are added and the VSF stacking is, the sysstack command is put into the variable file and uploaded, the switch will immediately reboot because VSF is enabled, come back online, and then from then you can then plug in the you know, members 2, 3, 4, etc., and they will, you know, by default join the stack domain and reboot and be part of the process. Okay, so it's still booting. But essentially the most important thing here is just make sure, like I recommend, maybe building the VSF stacking commands, the first time on a switch that's not connected to central, so therefore you can copy and paste those into the variable file. And then, for any additional stacks going forward, you can just pretty much copy that variable into another one, modify the MAC address for the different members, and you shouldn't run into that same issue that I had earlier. So hopefully you found this valuable. Thanks, and look forward to talking to you soon.